We're all Isco, aren't we? No one wants Toni Kroos to retire. He's one of the best passers football has ever seen. And although it may not happen for a few years, you've been asking us to find a replacement. So we have. Before we start the shortlist, we need to work out what Toni Kroos does and what he doesn't do. Juan Roman Riquelme recently described Kroos as the Roger Federer of football, saying he can play football and go home without taking a shower. Believe it or not, that helped us build a statistical profile. Kroos is not just a pass master, he's a master of every type of pass. His output over the past 5 seasons ranks him in the 95th percentile or above for long passes completed, chipped passes, and switches of play when compared to central midfielders. And before you say anything, these are not just sideways. Based on the same criteria, Kroos ranks above the 95th percentile for successful passes into the opposition half, into the final third, and accurate forward passes. But this might be the most bonkers stat of all. Kroos has finished each of the last 10 League and Champions League campaigns with above 90% pass accuracy. Once he gets the ball, he rarely gives it away, ranking above the 95th percentile for retention rate, pass accuracy, and long pass accuracy. This combination of obscene output and extreme efficiency is rarely seen. A lesser discussed element of Kroos' control is set-piece taking. This is not the priority, but his elite ball striking makes him one of Europe's premium dead ball specialists, especially when it comes to creating chances from corners and free kicks. That same technique also makes him a low-key scoring threat from range. What don't we need? Take-ons. Despite being one of our favourite metrics, Kroos does not dribble past players. Instead, he relies on his infinite passing range to break lines. And although he does carry the ball forward, this is not the same as taking on an opponent directly. Remember, we're looking for someone that can control the game without breaking a sweat. Finally, despite playing in a deeper role, the only defensive metric we're going to include is tackles. Diving into the odd challenge is the main extent of Kroos' defensive output. For this video, we're introducing something new. Not only will you see some radar comparisons using our number 6 midfield template, but from now on, we'll include a custom radar template to visualize the key metrics for each specific transfer brief. This is the Kroos Control Edition. The outer ring represents the 95th percentile and beyond. For the rest of the video, the labeled numbers will show the per 90 output of the potential replacement, so make a note of Kroos' numbers. Now we're ready to create the shortlist. Real Madrid are one of the biggest, if not the biggest club in Europe. They believe every player is a realistic target, so consider these options as backups if the dream picks become unavailable. More on them later. During his 5 seasons in the Premier League, Ruben Neves played more successful long passes than any other outfield player. Using his output across that time frame, the Portuguese midfielder scored 71% on the Kroos Control search, a decent start to the shortlist. But let's add some Turkish delight. Orkun Kokcu played more passes into the final third than any other player in Europe's top 7 divisions during the 2022-23 season, leading Feyenoord to their first Eredivisie title in 6 years. That earned him a move to Benfica for €25 million. Continuing his role on the left side of a double pivot, Kokcu ranks first among teammates for long passes completed, long pass accuracy, and passes into the final third. Although not as secure in his passing, Kokcu has proven he can match Kroos' output, and his 86% score reflects that. Of course, Florentino Perez could go full Perez and look to sign a Brazilian heir. Douglas Luiz is controlling games week in, week out for Unai Emery's Aston Villa and is about to enter his peak years, while Gabriel Menino is showing plenty of promise at Palmeiras. Alternatively, Madrid could stick with German engineering. Angelo Stiller has emerged as one of the Bundesliga's brightest talents, orchestrating the Stuttgart midfield as they push for a Champions League spot. Stiller spent 9 years at Bayern's academy and even made 2 senior appearances in the Champions League for the Bavarians. But this is the pick of the realistic options. Aleix Garcia has gone from forgotten Man City academy graduate to La Liga title contender with Girona. The chief conductor of Mikel's side, Garcia ranks first for switches of play and successful crosses in Spain's top flight this season, 2 core aspects of our search, while only Kroos himself has played more successful passes into the final third. In fact, the only player not called Toni Kroos that ranked higher when applying our search across Europe's top 7 leagues was one of our wildcard picks. These shouts include players that are incredible from a data point of view, regardless of their current league, age, or whether a positional change would be needed. Joey Veerman has created more chances than any other player in Europe's top 7 divisions this season. Progressing the ball at will from a left-sided pocket like Kroos gives him an impressive 86% score. The only reason he's a wildcard pick is due to the fact he is playing in a hyper-dominant PSV side. Madrid might want to wait until his next move. With a former Manchester City youth player already on the list, how about an academy graduate from United? Angel Gomez was on our radar even before seeing his 78% score. The 23-year-old has established himself as a key member of Lille's side over the past 3 seasons, flourishing since Paulo Fonseca's arrival in particular. For years, England fans have been crying out for a midfielder that can play the game at his own speed, setting the tempo for others to follow. Whether in a more advanced role or from a deeper position, Gomez has been doing exactly that for 2 years. His passing range is not quite Kroos level, but that doesn't affect his ability to dictate a match in a similar way. Squawka subscribers might recall our attempted Real Madrid midfield rebuild at the start of the 2021-22 season. Back then, our wildcard Kroos replacement was Toni Kroos. Since that video, despite breaking into the Dutch national team in the deeper role we're looking for, Kroos has moved further up the pitch. But this is your reminder that Toni Kroos was signed from Bayern as a number 10. The development of his craft as a deep-lying playmaker has happened over the course of his 10-year Real Madrid career, and this next pick has just completed the same transformation. Remember we said that only one player could beat Aleix Garcia? Well, here he is. Hakan Çalhanoğlu was the second best pick after Kroos himself, with a score of 92%. At 30 years old, he's definitely not a long-term replacement, but the fact he is the leading statistical match deserves a mention. But if evolving from a number 10 to a number 6 is not a wild enough switch, how about replacing one of this generation's greatest midfielders with a right back? In terms of progressive, penetrative passing, Trent Alexander-Arnold is the only true match. Since the start of the 2018-19 season, he's played more passes into the final third and more passes into the opposition box than any other player in Europe's Big 5 leagues. Kroos ranks second for final third entries. But when looking at successful passes into both areas, Trent falls to 11th for final third entries and 7th for penalty area entries. Kroos takes top spot for the final third. As you can see, his ball retention and passing accuracy is way off the required standard, and that's why he returns a 77% score. But if we remove the accuracy-based metrics, his score rockets to 92%, whereas other candidates stay the same. So the only question is whether Alexander-Arnold could learn to control the chaos, or rather, to what extent is this wastefulness a symptom of Liverpool's style of play? There's only one way to find out. The dream options are exactly that. What if Real Madrid could do whatever they want? Who would they sign? The most obvious pick, and perhaps the most sensible, is Joshua Kimmich. Kroos' compatriot is almost a clone, and has already replaced him to some extent at international level. That said, at the Euros, we're going to see them in the same team for one last time. Rodri is the best midfielder on the planet, so has to be considered a dream. Unsurprisingly, he scored 84%, but he scores highly for every type of midfielder. We want a specialist. PSG will not be the most willing negotiators, but Vitinha is also worth a mention. The vogue option is going to be Ezequiel Palacios. Whether Bayern Leverkusen secure their first ever Bundesliga title or not, Xabi Alonso's side will get ripped to shreds in the transfer market, and Palacios will be at the top of every shortlist. But we suggested the Argentinian as the perfect Busquets replacement at the end of the 2022-23 season, so we're sticking with that, especially when you consider that, if anything, Leverkusen's Kroos would be Granit Xhaka. So, if not Palacios, who's the dream in terms of statistical profile, current ability, and potential? His compatriot, Enzo Fernandez. Before his record-breaking move to Chelsea, Enzo was the most sought-after midfielder in Europe. An underwhelming year for an inconsistent, poorly assembled squad should not be used against him. Even then, he still scores 86% on our search. If we use his 2022-23 stats, which still includes some time at Chelsea, his score increases to 89%. Based on just the half season at Benfica, it would be 91%. During that brief spell, Enzo ranked first for long passes completed in Europe's top 7 leagues, with a success rate of 77.4%, and was in the top 5 for successful passes into the final third. Then he was named Young Player of the Tournament at the 2022 World Cup. You get the idea. Finding a replacement for one of the best passers football has ever seen is an almost impossible task. In this video, we've shown you 15 potential replacements for Toni Kroos. To finish, here are the Squawka suggestions. The realistic option, sign Aleix Garcia and Angelo Stiller. This will create a seamless line of succession for the next 10 years, with all players fulfilling the role at their peak. The wildcard option, tame Trent. Alexander-Arnold is the biggest risk in terms of playstyle, and probably the most unlikely signing given his affiliation to Liverpool. But if he can emulate Kroos' efficiency to even some extent, he is the most fascinating option on this list. The dream option, save Enzo Fernandez. Reports that his agent was looking for a way out of Chelsea seem to have been false, but the sentiment remains the same. While the club continues to search for an identity, Enzo's role will continue to be inconsistent, and he will not have the platform to demonstrate his greatest strengths. At Real Madrid, Enzo could inherit Kroos' title as the most progressive passer in Europe. We don't think it would take him long to ascend to the throne.